Pittsburgh Steeler fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Curtain Call podcast. My name is Michael Beck, deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, hanging out as always with one Mr. Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing very good, Michael.
Perfect. That's great news to hear, and we're continuing along with our prospect little saga here leading up to the draft. Tonight we got Micah Allen from Cowboys Ride for free, SB Nation's Oklahoma State affiliate. We're breaking down a couple prospects. Micah, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Quite well, I would say. Quite well. And if we really want to jump right into things, of course, one of the glaring needs of the Steelers this offseason is that offensive line. And you guys certainly have a good one in Teven Jenkins. Going back over your time really kind of covering this team, where would you say Teven Jenkins ranks amongst Oklahoma State offensive linemen, really?
So as you guys probably are aware, Teven is looking to go first round. And he's going to be the first offensive lineman to go in, I believe, in the first round since Russell Okung. And that was the 2010-2011 season, I believe. So, obviously, that puts him pretty high up there as far as offensive line talent from Oklahoma State.
Awesome. Geoffrey?
Yeah. What would you say his strengths are? I've watched a bit of film on him. Do you have any insights on him? What he's good at? What kind of scheme fits he would be well suited for? Anything like that?
I mean, there were some guys that are going to be, getting reps at the NFL level on defense. It specifically comes to mind the Texas game, and Jenkins was just absolutely having a field day with them. So he obviously can handle, playing with guys that may be a little bit bigger than him. I just think that he's, in an offensive lineman, you want somebody that's not afraid to, get down in the trenches and, play really hard and really tough. And, I think that's something that Jenkins definitely has.
So then I guess the adverse of that, what are kind of the weaknesses of his game? And can you point to one kind of matchup maybe throughout his career that he potentially struggled a little bit with?
Let's think here for a second. I guess the thing about it is toward the end of the season, he was having a little issue staying healthy. So that's something to kind of look at as, not necessarily a weakness, but just something to look at. I would say, in addition, he's not the fastest, is another big thing that, as I'm reading draft coverage, draft profiles on him, that's another thing that, that's another thing that I see that a lot of people kind of take as a weakness in Jenkins. And, he had a pretty good Senior Bowl, but didn't necessarily, show anything that was spectacular. So that might hurt him a little bit. But yeah, so, I really just, it's hard for me to come up with things that are bad about Teven. So.
That's perfect to hear. Geoffrey?
Yeah. I see a lot of people, because of his arm length, have projected him to move inside to guard Teven Jenkins. Do you think that's a good move for him, or do you think he's more of a tackle, or is he a guy who can play both?
He's a guy that can play both. I believe he played a couple different spots this past season even. There was quite a bit of adversity on the offensive line. So, there were moments where Teven, kind of had to step up a little bit and fill different spots and, kind of was able to step up to the plate at each of those spots whenever he needed to. So, I think if they wanted to move him to guard, that would be an option for sure. I think that experience in college this past year would help him do that if he needed to.
That's really interesting because one of the spots the Steelers are clearly struggling with and kind of lacking talent-wise is that tackle spot. And when it comes to that position, this team could look at the left side or the right side. Has Tevin ever taken snaps as a left tackle?
I actually could not tell you that off the top of my head. I believe so. But I think for the most part, he's been right side.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to Chuba Hubbard. He put up a phenomenal year last year, and a lot of people said he would have. A lot of people think he's actually hurt his stock by staying around one more year. Do you have any opinions on whether his play was different, or was, the offense overall different, or what happened between his last year and this year for Chuba Hubbard?
I think it was a lot of different things. I think that as a running back, you really rely on you obviously need a good offensive line to be good at your job. And there were times where the offensive line, minus Tevin, honestly, struggled quite a bit this year. And I think that kind of hindered him a little bit, or not necessarily hindered him, but hindered the way that they were able to use him, if that makes sense. And in addition to that, I think, there was quite a bit, I don't want to say drama, but just quite a bit of outside noise this summer that I think might have gotten to him a little bit. I'm not going to say that that's, fact one way or the other, but I think that definitely might have played a part. And then, I think there could have been a little bit of, I am just trying to not get hurt a little bit. So like I said, I think it was just a culmination of a lot of different factors that resulted in a bit of a disappointing year for Chuba. But, a disappointing year for Chuba is still a fairly good year overall. So, like I said, it was just kind of a mixture of things.
Now, with Chuba, I guess with both players, if you could pinpoint one, who is the best offensive player? It could even necessarily doesn't have to be either of those guys, but in your opinion, who's the best offensive player of that Oklahoma State offense?
Of the draft eligible players, or just like overall?
It could even be overall.
Okay. That's a really good question. Let's see. Honestly, Tylan Wallace. I think, Tylan is just a really good player. And I think that he's proven time and time again why people talk about him. He's just, watching him make a contested catch is a thing of beauty. And, I think that there's a really big leadership quality to Tylan. I think he was glue for that offense this past season. I think that, what he's been able to do over the course of his Oklahoma State career has just been phenomenal. So I'm going to go with Tylan.
Okay, talking about Tylen Wallace, his freshman season, if I'm right, was 2017, where he didn't produce much. And Steeler fans know that year pretty well because we took Mason Rudolph and James Washington in the 2018 draft. And then Tylen Wallace had a very James Washington level numbers in his sophomore year. And then after that, it kind of came back down more to earth. He played the same, if I'm right from what I was watching of him, he played the same position as James Washington. What would you say the difference between him and James Washington as receivers at Oklahoma State would be?
I would say that Tylan plays a little bit longer than James did, if that makes sense. Tylan is taller. And, I think that he was much more physical in his play. He wasn't afraid to get choppy with a safety and say, okay, catch me. And, that's just not necessarily the way that James played. I think that he's just a little bit more physical than James. I think would say would be the biggest difference between the two would be.
Now, we got a couple questions here in the live chat I'm going to quickly bring up. And everyone watching live, by all means, if you have any questions for Micah, please throw them in the live chat. We'll get to a couple of them before we get back to our regular scheduled questions. But Andrew Wilbar, this is more of a comment. He says he thinks Teven Jenkins is more of a day 2 prospect. Says he has slow feet and isn't quick off the snap. Would you agree with that?
I agree with the analysis, but I don't necessarily think it's enough to drop him to day 2. I think that, there's enough good about him that I think kind of offsets that, if that makes sense. So I still think that he's going to go, it'll be late day 1, but I think he goes round 1.
Now, Andrew is on fire here in our live chat. He asks about Tylen Wallace. Would you happen to know if he's on TikTok? Because that seems to be a bit of a problem with our receivers.
I love Juju, by the way. But I think Tylen's on TikTok. Actually, I can look that up right now.
Yeah, we love Juju here too, but there's a lot of the older people in the media and in the area that are very concerned about players being on TikTok instead of, I don't know, practicing even more, I guess.
Right. It's distracting.
Yeah, it's the old, you're doing something in your free time, shouldn't you be practicing? It's like, do you, like, if you're a plumber, do you work 8 hours a day, then go home and just redo the plumbing in your own house? It's
right.
So did you find him on
I
TikTok?
was not able to find him on TikTok. Oklahoma State football is, but I don't believe Tylen is.
Awesome. Now, I lost the question, but we were going to get into Rodarius Williams anyway. Of course, the brother of Greedy Williams. Apparently, I have a Jamaican accent there for a second. That was weird. But with Rodarius, is he anything like his brother? Do you see him as like as a solid draft prospect?
To me, Rodarius is more of a undrafted free agent steal. I think he might go 6th or 7th round. But I just think there's a lot of talent out there at his position. And so, I think if somebody does get him as an undrafted free agent, they're getting a great player for a steal. But I think that, it's just not quite at the level where I would automatically say he's going to get drafted, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Now, Geoffrey, do you have any follow-up with Rodarius Williams in mind?
Yeah, what would you say his strengths are, and why do you think he will struggle with it, or his struggles that should cause him to drop?
So, as far as strengths, I think that he played in a really offensive heavy league in the Big 12. The Big 12 has some great players on offense, or they had, throughout his entire Oklahoma State career, he's had to deal with a lot of really, really good players. And I think that has only made him stronger. And not only that, but in practice, he's facing off against people like Tylen Wallace. And so that also helps. He's got that experience. And, I think Rodarius' biggest problem was that sometimes he just missed assignments and made kind of silly mistakes, correctable mistakes, but still mistakes that you don't want to see from someone that you're going to draft in the draft. Good enough that, like I said, he'll find a spot in the NFL. But those mistakes some of them just were not acceptable for a player of his caliber. And, I think that that's what's going to hold him back is those little mistakes. But, he can work. He can work really hard and get those corrected. And like I said, end up having a really good NFL career. So those are my two biggest things with Darius.
Now, Geoffrey, do you have any more questions on Rodarius, or can I move on to something else? Okay. So Ron Chess puts this in the live chat, and I want to follow up on this. He asked Micah, I heard Tevin is described as an offensive lineman with attitude. Would you agree towards that?
Oh, heck yes. That's what I love about watching him, is, he just, I can almost describe it as sometimes he'll just go all like Hulk with Loki and the Avengers on them, and just kind of throw them around, and it's beautiful. And I love that attitude with him. So yes, I definitely agree.
Now, before I pass that off to Geoffrey, does that ever get him in trouble with penalties, or is that kind of a concentrated attitude?
I think it's concentrated. I don't think he does get penalties sometimes, but I also think he's kind of smart about it. So it kind of honestly just depends on who's reffing the game. So
Dang
I would
refs.
say it's a bit of a hit or miss.
Gotcha, Geoffrey.
All right, I wanted to bring up for Michael here another Canadian prospect that we can look at, and that would be Amen Ogbong Bamiga. I almost screwed it up.
You will.
Ogbong Bamiga.
Ogbong Bamiga. Tell us about him. Tell us about Amen.
So Amen, he's been a really, really great player and a cornerstone of that Oklahoma State defense for the past couple of years. I've really enjoyed watching him play. He is a guy that will make a play when you need him to. He was a really big leader on this defense this past year, especially. And they're really gonna miss him. He was really good at getting to quarterbacks. Quarterbacks in the Big 12 feared him, I think. I really enjoyed watching him play over his career at Oklahoma State, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I think he's going to find a place in the NFL. I'm not sure where exactly that is, but I do think eventually he will end up in the NFL somewhere. I think that him and Chuba both are kind of showing I think that kind of showed the nation that Canada produces really good football players. Repping, Alberta. So we're really proud of him. And like I said, I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, just for context, I'm from Vancouver, so just got to rep the red and white over here. But just to rattle off a couple more live chat stuff here, specifically about Amen first. Thaddeus wants to know where exactly he's going to be drafted round wise.
That's a great question. I think his position is really saturated. I think there's a lot of really good players that play where Amen does. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he goes anywhere from, fourth round to possibly he maybe even go undrafted. He's one of the ones that I'm just not really sure. But, like I said, I do think he'll end up finding a home in the NFL. I think he'll end up going somewhere. I'm just not sure where that is yet.
Now, Eric Pereira, I hope I'm saying that right. He asks, this is going to be going back to Tevin Jenkins. He asks, can he pass protect? So maybe to kind of grow that question a little bit more, is he more of a road grader, run blocking type? Does he do both really well? Is he really good pass blocker? What's kind of his absolute strength?
I think that Oklahoma State used Tevin as more of run protection. I think he basically was there to prevent, holes. But I also think that, he did protect the quarterback a lot. And I think that Spencer Sanders can kind of thank Tevin for not being on his butt most of the season. And so I think that there is a little bit of both in him. I think he can do both, but I think that he would probably do better at protecting against the run.
Awesome. Then, Geoffrey, before I turn it over to you, I do have a question about Chuba myself here. Specifically, do you think he can return to that 2019 form? Of course, he fumbled a ton this past season, which kind of became a big issue for him before he opted out at the end of the year. But do you think he can return to what he was in 2019?
Yes, I think so. I think that, that's obviously, we saw in 2019 that that's in him. And I think that he can get back there, especially, being motivated, trying to get into the NFL. I think that will definitely, help. And I think that he can get back to that 2019 form. I believe in him. So I think that, to me, when I see a player that does what Chuba did, consensus All-American, over 2,000 yard season, all that stuff, I have a hard time believing that they won't get back there. Now, with a running back, there's always the chance of injury and things like that setting him back maybe a little bit. But, I think he'll return there.
Awesome. And I know, Geoffrey, we've talked about in the past that Chuba, well, you specifically mentioned that he just kind of stemmed from trying hard. I'll let you answer that before you give Micah the next question. Geoffrey?
What? I'm sorry, who were you asking that of? You lost me. I don't know what you were saying there.
No, just about Chuba's fumbling troubles coming up this past year. I know a week ago when we were off air, we kind of talked about how that kind of stemmed from him trying a little bit too hard. So I'll give you that before passing you the next question is what I was trying to say.
Okay, I thought you were asking me to answer. I'm like, was that a question even? All right, actually, if I can show, there's a couple of questions here about whether people entered the draft or not. Let me click on this, see if I can do it. There we go. Colby Harvell Peel.
So, Colby Harvell Peel was kind of a roller coaster. He said he was entering the draft, and we were sad. And then he said he was coming back, and we're very glad. So Colby will be back next year. After kind of, I think this is just my opinion, but what I think happened is he realized that he might have gotten some bad advice. As far as, you should enter the draft. And so he has decided to come back for his senior year, which is great news to OSU fans. So.
All right. And one more, Josh Sills. There was.
I don't.
I think he might. Is he one of the ones who took the extra senior year option because of COVID?
Yes, that's what happened. He was a grad transfer from West Virginia. And yes, he will be using that extra year of eligibility.
Okay. Awesome. Anyone else that stood out on the team that is going into the NFL that may fly under the radar, may end up undrafted, or just people aren't talking about that you think is better and deserves to get a little more, a second look and maybe a little more attention?
Let me think on that for a second. Honestly, I think who we talked about is kind of who I think is going to be. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of surprises as far as, people that are being slept on or things like that. I think kind of with the guys that we have entering the draft, kind of what they are is what they are. So to answer your question, I think everybody that is entered the draft is, being evaluated the way that they should be, I think.
Okay.
Awesome. Then kind of going back to Chuba Hubbard, I'm just kind of curious what everyone's kind of mindset on him was when he decided, if I'm not mistaken, he opted out, but he played some of the season, then a couple weeks before it ended, he chose to opt out. I'm just curious what everyone's kind of mindset was when that happened.
So, you had the part of the fan base that was, go get your money, man. It's fine. You've done your part. go, we'll be fine, But then, you have the other side that, is very much, he should finish out has a scholarship, he should finish playing, blah, 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 blah. But overall, I think people were pretty supportive of Chuba because of what he did for Oklahoma State in 2019. He got Oklahoma State getting talked about nationally. I think people respected that, and I think people respected his decision for the most part. But you're always going to have the people that are very, I call them the olds, that, don't understand that attitude of I'm going to go get paid. So I'm happy to say that for the most part, people were overall supportive of him.
Sticking with Chuba, he was a big threat. I know in screen passes and little flats passes like that. Did Oklahoma State ever line him up like in a more receiver position and have him run routes, or did they use him mostly out of the back, almost entirely out of the backfield?
It was very much out of the backfield. Chuba was very much a back that if he can get in the open field, he's gone. And so Oklahoma State used that speed mostly. I would have liked to have seen them try to use him as a receiver a little bit more maybe, but Oklahoma State has a very, fairly pronounced wide receiver line. So they didn't particularly need him to be a receiver a whole lot. So it was mostly out of the backfield.
Great. Now, with Chuba, again, of course, he's one of those top running back prospects that kind of fell off a little bit. Now, do you still see him as one of the kind of elite backs this draft? Can he still be that guy?
It depends. I think he's very much two sides of a coin. I think that Chuba has that in him where he can play just out of his mind. But I also think that, he does let things hold him back a little bit sometimes. But overall, I do think he is an elite running back. I think that if he can get on a team that has a good offensive line where he has a lot of protection, I think he could be very, very deadly. It's just a matter of, being in the right place with the right offensive mindset and, being an offense that plays to Chuba's strengths. I think he has like I said earlier, I think he has the potential to be an elite back. I still think that's in him and that is him. I just think that, he kind of let himself drop down this season. But, I see the comeback for sure.
Great. Now, Geoffrey, I see we're getting to the top of the first half hour of our show here. I'll give you the last question if you got some more stuff for Micah.
All right. Going to Tylen Wallace. As a receiver, is he a guy that you would put like in space by himself and let him try and change of direction and just beat people that way? Is he more a pure long speed kind of guy where you're going to really want to focus on deep threat with him? Or do you see him as a guy that can move around in space and go into the slot and play different wide receiver spots? How do you view him and his role in the NFL?
Chuba? Are we still talking about Chuba?
No, Tylen Wallace.
Okay. Tylen is a very much a run down the field and catch it wide receiver. If you can get it in Tylen's vicinity, he's going to catch it. So I definitely see him going long and just kind of being out there in space to make catches and he does have speed to him. So, if he can catch it and juke somebody, I think that's an option too. I think he can play a couple different receiver spots for sure.
Okay. Is he and how does he do blocking? Does he do much in the run game blocking? Is he solid there? Just kind of, you don't notice him? Or does he show up as being good or show up as being bad?
I think he's just kind of he can block, and it's awesome when he does. He makes it look super cool. But I don't know if that's necessarily something that I would say is like something that Tylan is known for. So, I think that that's definitely an ability that he has. I just don't know if I would say it's like something that I would specifically point out about him. So.
Anything else, Geoffrey?
No, that's it.
All right, so that's the first half of our show. Micah, before we let you get out of here, is there anything you'd like to plug?
So you can follow me on Twitter at Micah Allen 18, and you can check out all of our Oklahoma State content at Cowboys RFF, and then the website is cowboysrideforfree.com. So if you're interested in learning more about Tylan or Tevin or Chuba or anybody that we talked about tonight, there's lots of content there for you to read. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on with us, Micah. Of course, I see a ton of more questions in the live chat. If you got a Twitter account, shoot them her way. I'm sure Micah would love to answer those questions for the people. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Now, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, just hang tight. We will jump into a quick, just couple second break, flip over and get to some pretty crazy Steelers news and NFL news breaking today. It is Wednesday, time of recording, of course. If you're listening on the podcast platform side, you can go ahead and flip over to the second part right now.
This is the break. Break.
And we're back for the second part of the Curtain Call podcast. As you're serenaded by Geoffrey Benedict, that was beautiful. We're gonna have to get him to sing a song to you before we get out of this this episode. I think that was beautiful, Geoffrey. Thank you.
Oh man, I'm messing with our podcast producer here. That's all I'm doing.
I wrote down the time for him, so I decided I'll be nice. So he'll send it over to the old BAD Brian Anthony Davis. But anyway, if you're watching, you might be curious, why is Mike and Geoffrey wearing jerseys tonight? Well, it's Rod Woodson's birthday today. So, of course, the Curtain Call is probably the biggest supporters of Rod Woodson there is out there. Geoffrey, I got a question for you. Before we start, I said his age. Turns out I was wrong what his age was. I quickly searched it up. Do you know exactly how old Rod Woodson is turning today?
Ooh, okay. I'm thinking when he was drafted. Okay, 49.
You are off. And honestly, it makes me feel old saying it. Rod Woodson's 56.
56?
Yeah.
Wait, when was he? No. Okay. Yeah. I had the totally wrong draft. I was thinking Carnell Lake. I was thinking the year he was drafted. Yeah. Woodson was well before that. Never mind.
It's all good, but isn't that crazy? Time flies. 56 years old for the NFL Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he was reportedly he was interested in coaching for the Steelers.
That came out this past week.
Apparently that didn't work out because the Steelers, hate fans and don't want us to meet him every single, training camp. If there's training camp this year and the Steelers didn't hire Rod Woodson, I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be personally offended by that because I would go there and just be like, woo, Rod Woodson. And he'd be like, I'm not playing, guys. Right? I'm like, no, you're the best.
I'm not signing anything for you. Gosh.
Joe Hayden, you're a bum. Rod Woodson's better than you.
You see that guy? That's Rod Woodson. I'm Joe Hayden.
Best show on podcast form, guys. This is the best.
Oh yeah, it doesn't get better than this show right here. But anyway, man. We can lead into some better content because I figured you'd have a rant for us tonight because the NFL salary cap dropped. Of course, huge implications across the league and for the Steelers. $182.5 million, if you didn't already know. I already see Geoffrey's blood pressure spiking right now. But we talked about how this was not going to happen. Turns out it did happen. How are you feeling on this?
It's stupid. It's incredibly stupid. Like I was arguing with someone on Twitter. You want to see me rant about this? I actually went off on Twitter a little bit.
I saw
but they were saying like, no, this is normal. It's what you expect. Like owners lost money. They need to save money. And this is a crazy thing to me. Okay. Owners, this is the point I want to make. Owners are in charge of the NFL. Roger Goodell does what the owners want. They're his boss. If he doesn't, they can just go to him and be like, Roger, this is what you're going to do instead. And he's going to do it. They're his bosses. They sign his paychecks. And so when you look at this, what's happening is you've got teams, and people are like, oh, not that much is going on. Yeah, the Steelers has handled this really well. But I want you to watch what happens with the Kansas City Chiefs, because they are 20 million over, and there are about 15 million I think they can easily, get from their roster, but they still don't have a complete team, even cutting 15 million, and they'd be 5 over. And you're talking about the people they can move with are people like Tyrann Mathieu, who doesn't have any more years on his contract. You can't push money back. So if you imagine this, where the Chiefs, in order to save money on the cap and get under the cap, have to go to Tyrann Mathieu and renegotiate a deal and get him an extension at the year where he is the most valuable he's ever been, right? And if they're doing this because they don't have money right now, think about this. What did the Steelers do because the cap dropped? They renegotiated Ben Roethlisberger's contract. Ben Roethlisberger was going to get like a $5 million roster bonus, and then he was going to get $9 million over a 16 game or 14 over a 16 game season. So you'd pay $5 million now, and then you'd start paying the man in September game checks, right? At the same time, you're actually getting revenue. Instead, the Steelers save a bunch of money on cap space this year, but the upfront cost was $14 million. So they spent $9 million now to save money on the salary cap. They paid $9 million now instead of later to save on the salary cap. Anytime you restructure a person's contract, you're taking money they are going to be paid out over the course of the season, and you're paying it to them right now. So if they redo Stephon Tuitt's contract to get rid of that $9 million base salary, and they put $8 million in a signing bonus, that's $8 million they're paying now, instead of in like $600,000, $700,000 installments each week of the season, when they're actually making money. Like this is a crazy thing to me. If you're looking at it and saying the owners they just don't have cash. Well, they're paying more now to do this. And if we're talking about a bump where the NFL, salary cap drops for the first time ever, it's going to drop $16 million, something like that. And then it's going to shoot up next year, which means all you're doing is paying money now to push money to next year. This is what this whole thing is doing, when they could have just balanced it out and said, okay, we're going to move this year gradually up because we know the year after that it's going to be crazy, right? We know that next year's cap is going to be solid. The year after that's going to be insane. Like it's just how it's going to be. They could have gradually did that and not have all this drama, not have teams have to cut players. And I'm waiting to see how the Chiefs handle this, because they may destroy the Chiefs. They may be like dismantling the Chiefs to the point where the Chiefs are not a Super Bowl contender. They're just a great offense. Because say the Chiefs have to cut Tyrann Mathieu. What's their defense look like? Say they cut Frank Clark. They've got these guys that they may have to move on from. So to me, it's the owners being short-sighted and bad businessmen is what this reeks of to me. I don't like it.
Going further past that, the Saints, who decided that they're going to throw the franchise tag on someone, they made a ton, they made all their kind of cut type moves that they could make today. They're still $31 million over the cap. That's including that franchise tag, which I can't believe hasn't been rescinded already. Seriously, that makes no sense to me. The Saints, I don't see how they can't cut Marshawn Lattimore or Ryan Ramczyk. I can't see how they can't do that.
Yeah, Either that or you have to seriously sign them to long-term deals. And this is another thing with free agents. If you think about it, people are like, oh, free agents are going to have to take lower value 1-year deals and prove it deals. No, they're not. You can't give Bud Dupree a $10 million 1-year contract. Not in this season, not with the cap dropping. Instead, you're going to talk about a 4-year, $60 million deal where you take the signing bonus, spread it out, he gets a minimum payment, and you get his salary down to $5 million for this year, right? There's a lot of players that you don't want to sign long-term that you're going to have to sign long-term just to get their cap hit out. Or you're going to put a ton of void years on the deal, which if you're Bud Dupree, you're not signing a deal with a bunch of void years. Why would you do that when you could make them give you a whole bunch of money guaranteed just to get your cap hit down now? It's like the owners don't know business. It's I don't know. They're either they've got some elaborate scheme going on, or they're just poor businessmen. One of the two, because it doesn't make any sense to me.
What do you think about this year's free agent team before the season starts? Do you think if they had a 33rd team, the city called Free and the team named Agents, would they win the Super Bowl? Because that's kind of what it feels like right now.
Do they have a quarterback yet? Because they have everything else. The free agent team is beastly outside of quarterback. Someone just like Texas needs to just cut. Houston needs to cut Deshaun Watson or something, and that team's winning the Super Bowl. Because it's just going to get better, and a lot of teams are going to be fine. Most of the teams are going to be fine, but there are a few teams, and I mean, when you're talking the Chiefs, you're talking the poster boys of the NFL. They're the good guys with the high-scoring offense that are in the play. You want them competing for a Super Bowl if you're the NFL. It just, I don't understand why you would do this to the Chiefs and the Saints. It doesn't seem to make good sense for the overall product, and it's short-sighted because you're going to end up spending more money than you're going to save.
Yeah. Turning back to just some strictly Steelers news, because we could rant about this cap news. Like it is substantial news.
I could do it all day.
If you didn't think it was coming into this, like seriously, there's huge implications on that. But some of the other Steelers news of the day, which was pretty minor considering everything that happened, I thought we'd get a big news dump of contracts and stuff. They still have a couple days, not a whole lot, but. The first thing that came out, Derek Watt restructured his deal. Saves about $880K on the year. Pushes his deal value next year to $4.5 million. The cap better explode, or Derek Watt better be used a lot on offense, because that seems like a very cuttable number to me. But what do you think of the Derek Watt restructure?
Well, all the money they're moving to next year is going to be dead. You can't resave that. So it makes sense to me, because this year is stupid. So once they decide to be dumb this year and let the cap drop, restructure everyone. Push all that money to next year, because you're going to get such a bump. Like they're talking about the TV deal coming in at double what it was last year. Where like that's your whole team's paycheck right there. You don't have to have anything else. Close the stadiums. You can fund your team with just the TV deals. It doesn't matter. None of the rest, like the Bengals are like, sweet. We don't have to sell tickets. We can be cheap as heck. Why not trade Joe Burrow? See if someone will give you a used car for him. Who knows? Who knows? You're going to make money. It's like, oh, I'm going back on that. You know what? You already opened this can, so I'm just going to dive into it. But Derek Watt, people wanted rid of Derek Watt because the Steelers didn't use him last year. What people don't understand is the most you could save by cutting Derek Watt is $1.6 million, which is 2 minimum contracts. That's how much money you would save by cutting Derek Watt. Would have been 2 minimum contracts. And you're going to have to sign one just to replace him. And how good is that guy going to be? Derek Watt is a special teams captain level player. And if they don't bring back Jordan Dangerfield, he may well be this Steelers special teams captain. And he's a versatile fullback, which is what you want in Matt Canada's offense.
He's worked with Matt Canada.
Yeah, and he's worked with him in Wisconsin when they ran over everybody. I mean, they had Monty Ball. They had I told you, there was like 3 guys.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, they had 3 running backs, but they ran all over everyone. He played a lot that season. Tight end, and even in the draft, they're like, is he a tight end? Is he a fullback? No, he's an H-back, which is both, and we need those. He's going to be that position. Him and Jalen Samuels are going to be H-backs and wing-backs. So which is crazy to me if you look back. It's like the Steelers have been building this team for years. They've really been building this roster that has these types of players, the James Washingtons, the Derek Watts, which we added last year, but the Jalen Samuels. We've added guys that fit these profiles for years, and then we added Matt Canada. So to me, Derek Watt made a ton of sense just because he can do what you want our fullback to do. And really the cost savings, people, it's not legit enough. And you also got to remember what Tyler Matakevich got paid.
I think Derek, more. Yeah.
Derek Watt is a better special teams player than Tyler Matakevich. He is. And we have him for much less. And he actually plays fullback when he's healthy and the Steelers actually want to use him. Again, I want to point out the game he got hurt, the Steelers were actually using him before the fourth quarter, and he ended up getting hurt on that game. But his usage was going up, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the things to kind of watch with Derek Watt as well. We can talk fullback as much as we want, but like you were saying, those other positions, specifically filling the Matt Canada offense. The other name that they signed to an extension this year, of course, a restricted free agent, so it was a very minor vet minimum type deal. Ray McLeod is coming back for another season. Obviously a good move, an inevitable move, much like Robert Spillane, which should be announced really any time now as a restricted, exclusive rights even free agent. But Ray McLeod gets his extension done. Do you think he brings a little bit more juice to the offense in 2021?
He brings a different type of player. And that was actually one of my picks for the Steelers this year. Was I thought they were going to take a wide receiver later and kind of pick that kind of punt returner, all-purpose kind of guy, simply because in a Matt Canada offense, that's a valuable position. That's a valuable guy, a guy who can line up wherever and do all kinds of different things. More of an athlete than a wide receiver, that kind of a player. And he fits that. If you think of a guy when we played New York last year, they had Ty Montgomery, who was like a wide receiver, tight end, fullback, running back. Like, what does he play? He plays everything. Well, if you look how they use him in the offense, he was often a wing back or an H back. They use Ty Montgomery that way a lot. So when you get a guy who fits multiple roles and kind of has a diverse skill set where, Ray McLeod isn't a great route runner. He doesn't have the greatest of hands, but he's really elusive in space. He can run a lot of different things. So he has usefulness, and he's a pretty dang good kick and punt returner. So he works. He's worth it. He's one of those guys that you really want in a Matt Canada offense.
Yeah, I'm thinking back. He's probably the best pure returner type since probably like Stephon Logan that one year. Bring
up the Canada guy,
of course.
I came over from Canada. Stephon Logan, man. Stephon Logan. People don't remember how good he was. Like you look at the stats around him. He was a better punt returner than AB, and that's not easy to pull off. He was also a kick returner. He just literally brought nothing else. Ray brings talent at the return positions, and also some versatility on the field. And there's a reason, like, I was talking with Dave Schofield, and he was working on a piece he's doing. I don't want to ruin it. But he was looking at the 4 wide receiver and 5 wide receiver sets the Steelers did. And like Ray McLeod was in our 4 wide receiver sets quite a bit because he's just a very different animal than the other receivers we have. And so they put him in there to create some more versatility at, James Washington's expense, but it worked for us. So he makes sense to bring back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was just a move that was going to happen no matter what. But continuing on, of course, with the news today, it sets the Steelers right now about $5 million in the green when it comes to cap space. Still not enough. Really, they might be able to bring back a couple of their free agents right now, but still, like, if they want to put legitimate offers into some of these guys that should get contracts as free agency starts right away, they're going to have to build up a little bit more money. So before we get to the start of the new league year, which March 17th, if I'm looking at my watch correctly, that's a week today, with the negotiation period happening 3 days before that. Now, do you anticipate the Steelers making any types of cuts now to free up some of that cap space?
I don't expect cuts. I still look at Stephon Tuitt and say he is ripe for a restructure.
It's about $5 million though, I think, if he's restructured.
How much?
I think it's about $5 million back.
Yeah,
that they can free up,
that's pretty good. That's a pretty good return. And if you go completely against what the Steelers always do with players who aren't a quarterback named Ben Roethlisberger, they could extend him. He is definitely worth an extension. And he would be a great candidate for it. You'd save a ton of money.
Yeah, I can see that. But what about guys like Vince Williams and Eric Ebron? Are their spots locked, or are they even going to make it to these OTAs, whether or not those happen? But could you see? We just did a Vertex on Eric Ebron. And
I think Eric Ebron is a lock for next season. He is the best receiving tight end we've had. We got a non-scoop kind of insider scoop. It's not really a scoop because it's not completely on the record. I don't know how to exactly handle this. I don't have reporter training here, Michael, but I was doing the video and I'm watching Eric Ebron and towards the middle of the season, after like he was incredible in Houston, he's in there blocking Jadeveon Clowney. He's tearing up the, getting deep routes going. And then you get to about week 12 and Eric Ebron is losing blocks and he's dropping passes. And it looked to me like he lost upper body strength and he was visibly worried about getting hit in his back. And so I sent some clips to KT Smith, since he's a coach and he sees this stuff. And he also knows Eric Ebron a little bit from his work in New Jersey. And I was like, do you think this looks like a guy to you that is hurt, that is playing hurt? And he got back to me and he actually talked to someone he knows that works with Eric Ebron, who said he couldn't say more than that Eric was dealing with stuff during the season. He said he couldn't say more than that. But that Eric Ebron was dealing with things during the season. And if you look at that vertex, Eric Ebron's blocking early in the season. He's not great, but he's solid. He does a great job getting to the second level and blocking a linebacker. He delivered a chip on Jadeveon Clowney that took him straight out of the play. Like it was Clowney versus a Okorafor in run blocking. Eric Ebron just shoves Clowney inside. Like Clowney runs it, like pushes him straight into the defensive tackle, and Okorafor just grabs him and he's out of the play. Ebron didn't quite get to his next man that he was supposed to block, but Ebron's that kind of a guy. He's a decent, not good blocker. He's solid though. He can get you that first block, right? Often in space, he's not getting you much more than that. After he blocks his first guy, he's not peeling off and finding more guys. But at the same point, he's blocking linebackers and safeties can't cover him. And that's a mismatch. That's if you move Eric Ebron into the field and there's a linebacker on him, you slide him out. You slide him out a little bit into the slot, and what are they going to do with him? They can't cover him then. So for me, Eric Ebron brings that value. And if you look at the tight ends making his money, you're talking about like Nick Boyle from Baltimore. You're talking about CJ Uzuma. Yeah, you're talking about Tyler Croft from Buffalo. You're talking about a bunch of guys that are like either like Jesse James makes that same range of money. That's the guys that were getting that range. Ebron is honestly a good value for us. So Ebron's not getting cut. That's not a thing.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that too, especially with really nothing else behind him. I kind of anticipate that. And I would bet Matt Canada even uses him a little bit better. Canada like to put guys in the best option, not just what Ben wants him to do. Well, talking about OCs.
Yeah, that's one of the things with Canada. Canada puts receivers on the line, which is another position. We have drafted almost exclusively guys who are good at getting off the line when they're up on the line, not off the line and get more of a free release. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, all of them phenomenal at getting off the line against press coverage. And that lets your tight ends go in motion. So Eric Ebron is the kind of guy you can see going in motion a lot. Canada's offense could really cause trouble for the defense with him. Eric Ebron, all of a sudden he's lined up and then he's moving and then there's a snap and where is he? Like you got to locate him pretty quick because he is a good target.
Now, moving on a little bit to another way the team can save some money. And I was in Jerry Dulac from the Post-Gazette's Q&A today. And one of the questions that was asked to him, of course, Jerry being the Steelers insider working within the facility, he was asked about potentially extending two guys, those being Joe Hayden and David DeCastro. When he was asked about Hayden, he said he could see a 2-year deal being thrown his way to lower that cap number. Then the interesting thing to me here, and totally reading between the lines, he said the Steelers haven't approached David DeCastro about working on a contract extension. So to me, taking it a step back, that says they have talked to Joe Hayden. That's what it says to me. Do you kind of anticipate that move happening? Because I've seen other reporters suggest that they just go up to Joe and say, hey, if you want to play for us, we'll offer you $7 million. You're just going to take a straight pay cut. Good luck with getting more than that on the open market. Which kind of way do you see that going?
They think the Steelers are going to walk up to Joe Hayden and play hardball.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
people really think the Steelers are going to do that.
I can defend it because of the situation. Joe Hayden would, what is he, a fourth contract guy now? That's the market that's going to get hit very hard with the salary cap stuff. So
yeah, but our Steelers defense would get hit even harder, man. You would kill that room. That's one of those guys like Marquise Pouncey. You just restructure his deal. You extend him. You do what you have. You don't tick that guy off. You know, that's a guy, if you make him upset with the team and he's just like, whatever, I'll play out my contract, but I ain't doing more than that. I'm just here to work. You know, I'm just here to pay. I'm just here to get paid. You don't want that. Joe Hayden is a phenomenal leader on the team. He's still a brilliant player. He's a great communicator. And that salary to those kind of players, that salary is their position on the team. That salary says you are this guy. You are the guy. You need to be the guy. You need to be the guy that is leading the entire room. You need to be the guy that is making the plays in the clutch moments. You don't want to send a message to that guy that says you're not that guy anymore, especially when he's still that guy on this defense. He's still absolutely that guy on this defense. So no, Joe Hayden, yeah, absolutely. If you want to extend him, you could probably get him for a little less than he's getting now. I don't know. I mean, if Hayden's like, I want more than that, you just say, okay, we're going to play out your contract.
Hayden's made like $200 million over the course.
I know he's one of the highest paid like players.
It was before the second 2 CBAs ago when rookies could just get whatever the hell they wanted. So yeah, he got like a stupid rookie deal in Cleveland.
Yep. So well, I mean, you're going to Cleveland. You got to go for the money. That's the only reason to go there. Oh my. Who was the other guy you're talking about?
David Castro, but it seems like they're just going to play out his last year.
Yeah, which I understand that's how they normally do business, and you don't want to get locked into him after he's old. He's older, and he got hurt last year, and that affected his play. It would be tough to move on from him just 1 year after losing Pouncey. I mean, I was working on I've been doing roster reviews. I was working on the offensive line one. The Steelers right now have 4 players who played snaps for them on the offensive line last season. 4. And one of them is J.C. Hassenauer. You've got Chukwuma Okorafor, Kevin Dotson, and David DeCastro, and that is it. That's the only people who have actually played snaps on the offensive line for the Steelers, along with J.C. Hassenauer. So they've got a lot of questions there. You could see a lot of turnover there. And even if they don't, like say they bring in Zach Banner and they bring back BJ Finney, you're still having huge changes on the starting lineup because you still got, you're not having the same people there. It's, to me, David DeCastro, I really hope he has a bounce back season. I bet the Steelers are really hoping he has a bounce back season because that would be rough without him.
I think the injury really hampered him. And before I move on to one last topic, as we're kind of getting tight to the time, but if it was me as the GM, considering the year and how much money this team could really use, I'd probably go up to both Joe Hayden and David DeCastro and be like, how long do you plan on playing? And then just figuring out an extension from there. Yeah. Like, both players, like Joe Hayden, even if he regressed, even if he lost a step, you can put him in the nickel. You can put him at safety. You can do some stuff there. Joe Hayden's football IQ is 100 out of 100. He gets it. Like that's the pinnacle. If you're a DB, that's your guy. Watch him play. He gets the game. David DeCastro, it's kind of the same thing. Like you're playing guard, you really can't be hidden any more than that. It's kind of the more forgiving position along the offensive line, sandwiched between center and tackle. So there really isn't any movement per se, but I still think he has some years in him. That injury kind of took him back, whatever it was. So I expect a little bit more out of him. So kind of moving on from that and into free agency, which is 1 week from today. We'll be doing the free agency show, come to think of it, after the start of the new league year. Before we get there, do you anticipate the Steelers signing someone from outside the organization? Do you have any prediction for the next week for the Steelers before we start the 2021 league year?
Well, my last predictions was wrong with the salary cap not going down. I've been saying that for a while. That was wrong. Signing anyone? I don't see. Who would we be able to, like, when that's yeah, my brain just died. Okay.
It happens.
I don't really see anyone from outside the team being signed quick. If they do, it would be someone like a Lindsay, someone at the top that they're really going to pay.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to pay that guy. If you're going quick and you want him to sign, like, hey, we want you to sign. Don't listen to other teams. Come to our team. You're going to have to pay him. I do expect, I should say Zach Banner. I do expect that to be announced as soon as it's done.
Sure.
Like, he should be back. It doesn't make sense any other way for either side.
And you know what? The second they sign Banner, then that whole first half of our show, I feel like Tevin Jenkins just kind of drops down the board a little bit because then you have your right tackle locked in for a while. But
yeah,
outside of that, like I've talked to some insiders one-on-one, and they really do believe the Steelers are going to chase a guy like Corey Linsley. Of course, the first team All-Pro from Green Bay, if you're not aware of him, the center. He's from about an hour outside of Pittsburgh, so I kind of see it happening. That
also with Lindsay, Green Bay runs a ton of outside zone, a ton of it, and Matt Canada runs a ton of outside zone. So he would be a great addition as a leader on the team to be like, we need a guy who is going to lock down this style of offense that we want to run as well. He'd be a phenomenal pickup.
And you know what? But before we wrap this thing up, if you get a guy like that on your team, you lock it down for the last years of Ben. I use that very loosely. And then you have a veteran guy that's one of the best in the game for the next quarterback, be it Mason Rudolph, be it a rookie, be it whoever that may be. And you don't have J.C. Hassenauer as your starting center, which, Lord help us, it'd be a very long year if that's the case. But
look what a great offensive line did for Baker Mayfield. He looked good.
He really a good system, which the Steelers now have, and a very good offensive line. Complete 180. I was going to say 360, but that wouldn't make any sense. But 180 for the Browns and Baker Mayfield. But as we kind of reach our time limit here, Geoffrey, is there anything you want to plug?
I've been doing the roster reviews. They're all good. Our most, like I said, our most recent Vertex was on Eric Ebron. I'm trying to get. I think I've convinced Dave Schofield to do something with me next week that's going to get people riled up. So keep tuned for that. It should come out before free agency starts. But yeah, that's about it. I've got a film room coming out if I can actually get it finished on Juju Smith-Schuster week 9 at Dallas, and really the player that is there that we didn't really use. Which is sad.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one to watch because I'm sure by the time that comes out, we're going to start hearing the teams that are really in on him. So that's going to be a little tough, but we'll get there. We'll get through it together. We'll power through. Next week's going to be a ton of fun. We'll announce that team soon on social media. The next team that we look at for our little prospect tracker series here. So thank you for tuning in. Of course, click over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Breaking news. Opinion, assessment, you name it. The website's full of stuff. And then make sure you're just watching everything or listening to everything on the podcast side. Like, subscribe, do all that great stuff. We will see you guys next week. Thank you again for tuning in. For Geoffrey, my name is Michael Beck. Thank you so much.